Need a lot of joy in my life right now. I need a lot of fun. It's a crazy time out there, people.
Right? Crazy world we live in.
Well, welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Breaking the Barriers. Today, we're here to talk about channeling versus communication, two terms that are used widely in the spiritual world, in the intuitive world. And today, Red and I are going to explore what we think these things mean, what they
Yeah.
look like, and hopefully open up conversations for other people to explore these nuances in themselves. So, Red, if you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself.
My name is Red Moonigal. I'm a psychic catalyst, a teacher, and a healer. And for a long time, I would say I was more of an intuitive. I was very reluctant to use the word psychic, even. I had preconceived ideas as to what that looked like. So communication with guides was really the term I used. And it wasn't until fairly recently that I just kind of went, there, because it was somebody else's perspective and me going, oh, yeah, there is a channeling aspect here for me to explore. And I like to say all the time to people, like, what you think is your perception and reality of something can change, and it's okay to go, yeah, this is what the way I thought about it then, and this is the way I think about it now. And I'm very transparent with that. I'm very transparent, very authentic with that. And I am so excited to talk about this because it is something that I think we use terms and we get kind of lost in them.
Yeah. And that's, it's so important to talk about the terms because with that mind changing, that figuring out more of who we are, sometimes that comes with a new word that we didn't know defined something or described something. So that's what we'll be
Yes.
getting in today. And just in case you don't know me, I'm Safrianna Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide. I am a trauma therapist turned transformational mentor, author, speaker, CEO. I just do whatever I feel like doing in any given moment.
I love it.
Doing
I
the
love it.
druidry thing and the intuitive thing and all that for, about 20 years now, and continuing to learn terms and define things for myself and with others. And so, yeah, let's, I think, just start by anchoring into what we think, what we feel it means to communicate with something other than us. So for me, when I'm communicating with, let's say, a guide, an ancestor, that was a fun, like, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I started hearing dead people. Not all the time, thank God. I was like, this is not what I want my specialty to be. No, no. But when we're communicating with something else, it is, or someone else, it's like they are outside of us and we're having a conversation with them. So we have our sort of internal dialogue, and then whatever the dialogue is externally, it might be experienced internally, but experienced externally with this external entity, whether that be a human being or an animal or a plant or something we can't see or hear otherwise.
Yeah.
So that's my definition of communication.
Yeah, that is communication. So communication is one of those, like, it can be a broad swath of how you communicate. I've worked with people who are clairaudient like I am, but their clairaudience isn't like my clairaudience, right? Like, they're still communicating, they're still getting a back and forth exchange, but it's not as clear cut as hearing a guide's voice telepathically or auditorily. Some people have more of an auditory communication. Some people have a visual communication. Some people have a mind's eye communication and dialogue, sometimes with telepathic or auditory sounds in their head. Those are all back and forth. You are still you. There's never any fuzziness that what's coming out of your mouth and what you're getting is something else, someone else, an entity of something else. You're still you. You're still having that two-way perception. I have worked with a few people that they seem to be head numbers, just FYI. Haven't met one yet that wasn't a head number that does this. So I don't know if it's a universal thing. I'm always going to caveat that. I don't have enough information to know. But I have worked with a few head numbers that their clairaudience or their knowingness is still communication, still two-way, but it's not as, they get really caught up in, well, I don't hear things like you do, Red. And I'm like, well, okay, well, how does it come to you? And they're like, well, I just know. Like, okay. So when you ask the question, how do you know the answer? They're like, oh, well, I just know the answer. It's like really quick, or they feel like it's coming in, right? It comes in from somewhere else. And it's still two-way, but they feel it different because it's head number. And where do a lot of people go when they're in trauma and when they're not, they're overthinking or the anxiety kicks in, right? Like the head kind of goes crazy. So it's hard for them sometimes to even delineate that it is communication.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're already in their head.
Well, and that's, I'm I think the term is claircognizant.
Yes.
There's I always think clairsentient is the word I'm looking for. But clairsentient is one of the words I'm looking for, but clear seeing and clairvoyance is clear seeing. Clairsentience is clear knowing or feeling, sensing, and then claircognizance is clear knowing.
Claircognizance is clear knowing. Clairsentience is clear seeing. It's also knowing, but it's more often used in conjunction with sight.
Yeah, so that's where I get confused, because voyance is also sometimes used to describe the seeing, like things outside of you. So all of this to say, the way that we communicate comes across so many different ways, and there's so many nuances of each individual person, because I do have the clear knowing and sensing, and I'm not a head number, and things just drop in sometimes, but it's not my all the time. I have a lot of different other ways that I communicate too. And I think that can be confusing for people as well, is when we go and we take a workshop or a class, for example, if the teacher isn't aware of all of the nuance of all of the different ways that people can experience things, they might language in a way that says, like, if you're not communicating in this way, then you're not communicating. But there's so many different ways to pick up on communications from other entities.
Yes. And I think that's like part of where language gets confusing, right? So to articulate the claircognizance, the ability to know things, right, can be assumed to be channeled, which we'll get to channeling in a minute. But my perception is that energy sensitive or empathic, you can still have claircognizance, right? Clairsentience is also about the emotions. So it's emotional seeing and knowing, and clairvoyance is more sight. I get them confused too. I had to kind of think about it for a hot minute here while you were talking. And when you're thinking about communication, if you're an empath, empaths are more likely to like to use the word clairsentience, and empaths that don't have energy sensitivity or are trifectas and do have energy sensitivity, both sides can often say, well, everybody's clairsentience, and that's not true. And the clairsentient precognizance part, the clair part, the precognizance part of that is this communicatively knowing that that person's going to be sad or happy in the future about something, maybe not even understanding what it is they're precognizing, right? Like, I don't have empathy, the gift of empathy, but I do have some clairsentience. Like, I have had that. I am absolutely broken down and sad about something that I have no idea why I'm sad. I don't know where it's coming from. I do know I'm going to be sad in the future, but I'm sad now. And bio number 5s have pre-grieving, which is a whole thing. So I know so many 5s that technically, according to the definition of clairsentience, have clairsentience. But I'm not a 5, but I do definitely have that clairsentience. And it's not always about me. Sometimes it's about other people. Like, I know that this person's going to be absolutely devastated. I get that hit of that emotion and I'm going, okay, guys, Is this about me? Is this about somebody else? What do I do with it? And my guides in our communication will say, yeah, this is about you, or no, this isn't about you, or just put just put a pin in this. Like, this is something to be aware that this feeling you're feeling is a reflection of, or a pre-clear sentient knowing about something that's going to happen. Because even when it then does happen, that doesn't mean I'm picking up anybody's emotions, because I'm not.
Right.
So clairvoyance and the communication is often pictures. It's often images. It's often like, if you're doing past life stuff, like getting all these images of what's happening with that person and how they were dressing and what the smells were. And I get a lot of synesthesia with the clairvoyance with past life stuff. Like, I have to be really careful with that. And on the seeing dead people thing, like, when I was younger, that was a thing. Like, when that movie came out, Sixth Sense or whatever, there were people that were calling me going, "Hey, Red, have you seen this movie? I feel like this is like you." And I watched it and I went, "It is me, except not gory. That's gross." But never, like, it was never scary for me, right? Like,
Right.
everybody thinks seeing dead people is a scary thing. Like, yeah, not a scary thing. But I have chosen somewhere along the way in my communication with my guides and my ongoing life of refinement in my gifts, is that I don't want to be a medium for people's relatives that have passed on.
Right.
So I tell people, like, if you want to talk to your mom, you probably want to go talk to somebody else. I don't want to be a go-between. I don't want nothing to do with that.
Yes.
Because it's already people's guides. So
right.
Did that clarify the communication piece with the
Yeah, well,
clairs?
I want to just go back and because something that was coming to mind before you said it was how empathy and energy sensitivity and earth sense, the gifts we talked about in the last mini series, are all forms of communication.
Yes.
So everybody has a means of communicating. Again, it can be with a person, a plant, an animal, or some entity you can't see.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing about the communication, is it's happening between two entities. And you're probably one of them. And then there's another one, and you are having a dialogue or an information share between that. Other ways communication can come through. My guides really like to kind of tickle the side of my head. Like, I get little tinglies, or little, like, it almost feels like someone's petting my hair, like on a particular region on my head. And I'll pay attention to what region, because sometimes I can tell what guide it is based off of that. There's so many different ways to tune into communication, to open communication. And, going off of what you were saying about I don't really want to be the person to speak to your dead relatives, it's also important to know what our communication boundaries are.
Yes.
Because if we don't have good communication boundaries, it's also going to be hard to have boundaries around the channeling piece, which, again, we're going to get into very soon. But the communication piece, I think, is so important, to have that foundational understanding that talking to a guide, an ancestor, an angel, a whatever, is going to probably be somewhat similar to how you would talk to another person.
Yeah.
But through your senses in some way, or through your knowing in some way, or through your empathy or your energy sensitivity or whatever else. And no one else can teach you exactly what that's going to look like. We can just give you a grab bag of terms, like all the clairs and all. And again, the clairs are so not, like, for me, I know this is going to sound really awful, probably, especially taken out of the context, but I don't care about the clairs. Like, I don't care about the specific words, which is why I don't bother often to commit them to memory, because it's not my specialty of what I teach about. But it also, all you need to know is your 5 senses: see, hear, smell, taste, touch, right?
Yep.
And then you can know things, you can feel things, you can remember things. Like, all of these are ways that we are getting information from the outside world. Thus, we're communicating with what is outside of us. So, I like, the language doesn't matter so much, as long as you yourself can fine tune and understand, how am I receiving communications, and also how am I communicating outward.
Well, the permission thing, I think you and I had a conversation months and months ago. I can't remember when, but we had talked about that permission thing, and you were like, "Oh my God, that's like a
Oh,
light bulb." And
yeah. I'll tell the
and
story in a minute.
yeah, and I think that how we think communication is and what we think from our Western paradigm and over Hollywood and over fantasized perspective of how things are isn't we're forgetting some basics. We got the cart way in front of that horse. Why don't you tell your story? Because I think that's
Yeah. So
applicable here.
Red is working on a manuscript. I was blessed to be the person who got to really like be the developmental editor in the book. So I was one of the
Mhm.
first people to read it cover to cover in its initial draft. And I was reading the section on guides where Red is talking about communicating with your guides. And Red tells a story in the manuscript about how she realized she wasn't allowing her guides to communicate with her and that she needed to give them permission. I read this and went, oh, that makes so much sense. I need to give my guides permission to communicate with me and to
Mhm.
know what's going on in me. And what I did is I may have given all of my guides permission to access me all the time and to give me all of the downloads from all of me at my highest soul level all the time. I gave too much permission, which we can
Yep.
absolutely do with the communication.
Oh yeah.
And then I came to Red and I'm like, I'm feeling crazy. And we had this conversation and she got to the bottom of it and was like, oh, you opened the door way too wide. So
Right.
since then I've had to kind of taper back and like my primary guide, my secondary guide, several of them, I'm like, you have full access, but please only communicate with me in these types of ways unless
Yes.
it's an absolute emergency and you need to get my attention now. And then you can communicate in all these other ways. That's fine. But I
Yeah.
had to have those communications with them to kind of create the container for
Mhm.
myself for how I would receive, what they were trying to tell me so that I could
Yeah.
actually hear it. So that permission piece is huge. We do need to give our guides permission. And I just want to throw this out there because I have some, dear friends in the world and clients I've worked with and whatnot. And we have talked about dark entities and null voids and all of that before. And we can, if you're worried that you're receiving negative communications, if you're worried you're receiving communication from an entity that is malignant or malicious in some way, you can say, I refuse to
Mhm.
have conversations with you. I refuse communication. And you can ask your aligned guides to come in and help protect or block
Yeah.
those communications
Yeah.
for you. So I want to say that
Yes.
because that's huge and important.
Yes.
And I just hear from so many people who, you
Yeah.
know, they're giving permission for negativity to come in.
Yes.
Like they are
Yes.
a beacon going, yeah, let all the
Give me all the
shady
things.
let all the shady things come into me. No, put your boundaries up. You're allowed to do it.
Yeah. I think there's several layers in this. One is I've worked with people that they come out of the woodwork and they're like, Red, I'm being attacked by a whatever. Or their guides are giving them telling them to do bad things. And I'm like, those aren't your guides.
Nope. Your
They're not
guides
your
will never
guides.
harm you.
Your guides will never harm you. They will never tell you to do a bad thing, and they will never encourage you to harm yourself, and they will never encourage you to harm someone else. Period. I have never, ever, ever, ever. There are very few rules in the universe, okay? And I say this all the time, but that's one of them. And if you're getting maligned, unaligned, icky, whatever, that could be a variety of things. It could be an external entity, possibly. It could be your own shadow ego taking over, and our shadow egos do weird shit in our heads and our bodies.
Parts of
Just,
us love to do
oh,
fun
yeah.
things.
Oh, yeah. And depending on what karma you're carrying, it could be past life karma bubbling up. And I don't ever want to dismiss that. Those are real feelings, but also your guides are not telling you to do bad things. Okay.
Yeah.
So part of that communication thing, I get this all the time. People are like, okay, Red, I'm ready for the thing. Tell me all the things. Don't hold back. I'm like, you do not ever want me to do that. And I'm not ethically going to do that because what you think you're prepared for and what you're really prepared for are two very different things. And it is not me playing gatekeeper, just FYI. But I have rules in communication as someone who hears people's guides. When I go into session with someone, this is that communication, this is that boundary piece. And it took me a long time to work out what that should look like in a client session, because my ability to communicate with guides is much stronger than my grandma or my great grandma's, even who I learned from. So they didn't have any guidance for me, right? My grandma's advice was to read the Bible and read that section about putting on the armor of God. That was her only advice. And I'm like, okay, grandma, that's not really helping me, but thank you, right? And so there's this clarity that I've created in a session where my guides know that they're the intermediary between me and your guides. And my guidelines are very specific. Like, I'm going to follow the blueprint in a blueprint session. I'm going to follow these criteria, and if there's something that's really really important that's out of order, that's okay. I will still communicate that. And I trust people's guides. So there are times when guides are like, this message has to be said word for word. And I do. And then I promptly forget, and that's a whole other thing. But there's an understanding and a trust between me and guides that they trust me to say what they want me to say. Sometimes they're like, because this is the interesting thing about guides, is that there are guides for our true entity self, right? Our meat suit filter system is our bio number, and our bio number hears things in a very certain way, which is why when you're communicating, if you know somebody's bio number, that communication can be a little easier, right? Because you're delivering in those set of words. But the communication piece and those boundaries, when people say, oh, I want to open all the floodgates to all my guides, I go, okay. And yours is a good example of like,
learned from that. Thanks. I literally felt like I was going stir crazy for 3 months, y'all. It was not good.
I know it was not good, but you had to, you chose that journey in your blueprint, and you chose that journey to go, oh, I have a new piece of information to play with. Great. I recommend to people all the time. That's why when they do blueprints with me, like, we talk about your primary. I generally introduce people to maybe 4 or 5 guides, like overarching their primary guides over these sections, because it gives them tools, it gives them a framework to begin the conversation of, what does that boundary, how do I communicate with this guide? How do I communicate with that guide? And too often I get the, well, I just want them to telepathically be connected to me all of the time. I want all of the information. And then it goes sideways and they're a little bit stir crazy. I mean, you did not have an uncommon experience.
Yeah, when you have 12 new voices in your head all of a sudden, though for me they're not really new voices, they're new sensations. And so my entire body was just tingling 24/7, and I was like, what's happening to me? Did I have nerve damage somewhere?
No,
Like, it was
yeah.
so bizarre. So this is warning stories, not to scare you, because again, your guides can't hurt you. They're not here to hurt you or be malicious in any way, shape, or form. But it can be a really uncomfortable experience in the human meat suit to suddenly be having sensations, knowings, visions, hearing, etc. Because you've opened the channels of communication. And if I could make a recommendation to anyone who's starting to work with their guides, it is to get to know, like, one guide at a time, really deep, and really work with them for several weeks, maybe a month, and then reassess.
There's a couple different tools, and I've used tarot with clients. I've used oracle
love
cards.
to communicate with oracle cards.
Like one deck per guide, right?
Yep.
Like, pick that deck, and that is your communication.
I literally have sticky notes on the back of all of my decks that have been assigned to a guide when I want to go talk to that guide.
Yeah, that's a really good way to start, especially if you're kind of like, am I going crazy? Is this really in my head? Am I just imagining this? Right? Like, we all have that. I say we all have that. I've been doing this so long that I don't have that anymore, but I do know so many people that do. And anybody can communicate with their primary guides. Anybody can. That you don't need me. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had people like that have sessions and they're like, I want to talk to my own guides. I don't want to have to call you. I'm like, great. This is a beginning step. And often I get that frustration, like, well, I feel like I'm beyond that step. I'm like, well, you're not beyond that step if you're still calling me and still asking the same questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not,
Yeah.
this is not me being critical. It's that communication piece hasn't truly been established in a two-way trust paradigm. Yep. There's a co-creative trust paradigm. And oftentimes people that come to me going, well, I read somewhere I can change my blueprint, I can change my contract, I can choose to do these other things. I'm like, yeah, you can. And have you created a foundational communication with your baseline guides to know what's going on first before you, because your higher self is very aware. And I will tell you, as somebody who is very aware of, and you know this, Safi, like there's this quantum knowingness when you're really connected to pieces of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that some of what I've chosen to channel in has damaged my physical meat suit body because I'm trying to pull way more in than my body can handle.
Yep.
And I can't fix that physical damage at this point. Like, I do my best. And I am always playing with the hope that maybe I could fix that. Maybe if I use this tool, I could fix it. Like, because I'm curious and I want to break the barriers of perception. But at the same time, I acknowledge that your multidimensional, quantumly connected self, I knew better. So every once in a while, when something happens and I go, what the hell was I thinking? I just have to kind of go,
well, me, I guess you had this figured out and I just don't right now.
Right. And I don't. And it's okay to be in that place. We've really is
expand our ability for uncomfortable communication too.
Yes.
Like information we don't really want to hear, but we hear anyway. And to be able to go with that. So I feel pretty good about what we've shared about communication. I think that was fantastic to, again, reiterate communication. You and another entity are having some form of back and forth exchange.
Yeah.
Versus channeling. Now, there's a lot of different ways people channel as well. There's not just one size fits all channeling.
Nope.
I will never forget the first time I like genuinely saw someone channeling, like blew my mind.
Yeah.
This, I don't know hardly anything about them. I happened to see like a YouTube and it was a podcast that one of my friends was on. And this person channels Norse gods. So Norse god figures, and shares little bits and pieces from the perspective of these Norse figures about historical considerations for why things looked the way that they did in the past and whatnot. And it was, I'm a very good read of authenticity. I know when somebody's performing or playing.
Right.
And this was not what happened with this person. They were having, they're the host of the podcast. They're talking with the other guests and they're like, all right, well, I'm going to invite, I don't remember who came in. But I'm going to invite so-and-so in. And this person like opened themselves. You could feel them energetically. If you're an energy sensitive anyway, like feel the energy open.
Right.
Yeah. And this other entity essentially used the mouth to bring the information through. And it was so interesting to watch because this person literally their tone changed, their accent changed a bit. And they shared all of this very clear information. We're able to answer questions like on the fly from the other guests. And then the time came to a close and this person was like, the entity was like, and I'm done. And they left. And then the person was back and remembered almost nothing. Sometimes I will remember when I do channel, I will remember teeny little flickers of it. Like if something really emotionally resounded with me, the entity, that might stick, but the rest of it kind of goes. And for me, I know I'm channeling when I have no cognizance about what's coming next.
Yep.
Like I can't lead the thought ahead because it's coming through in
Yep.
the moment.
Mhm.
Now, to differentiate,
Mhm.
Red, sometimes when you're doing the blueprints and all kinds of other things, you communicate with a guide
Yep.
and then you come back and you communicate with the person in front of you.
Mhm.
Other times it opens up and it just comes out, and then you're extra unaware because you're no longer communicating.
Nope.
You are the channel
Mhm.
for the information coming through from another entity. So
Yeah.
that's my basic difference is channeling is just open. It's coming in and it's coming out, and just like
Yeah.
water flowing through a channel or electric
So,
current.
yeah. And so there are some rules around channeling that I think are, you can break the rules, but then weird shit happens, and maybe not in a good way. Most people have heard of Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. He was a typical channeler, right? He laid down, an entity would enter his body, didn't really know what to do with the body, so just talked, right? That is a I'm giving up my body to this other entity, and he had no memory, very few memories, very few like memories of what was happening. That's why they recorded and had somebody write, because then they'd ask him questions later. He's like, no. um and there are quite a few channelers that are fairly popular out in the world, and
Oh, I
I
love
can't
Abraham Hicks. Like Abraham Hicks is one of my favorites
I
because
can't keep track of them,
yeah.
honestly. I can't. there there's a couple that have done automatic writing channeling. So
Mhm.
Bartholomew is one of my favorites. The book I Come as a Brother has literally been on my shelf, and I've given hundreds of copies of that book out. When I read it the first time, I went, here's a truth with a capital T, and everybody needs to read this book. And interestingly, there are things in that book that I reread it recently, and I went, oh yeah, I forgot I knew that.
Gotta love
um,
remembering.
so and sometimes channeling comes through in sideways ways, right? Like, I use the guy who did the Avatar movies. I can never remember his name.
James Cameron?
James Cameron. Thank you. Um, when I watched Abyss, the first water movie that I watched of his, I went, this man is channeling memories.
Mhm.
And I could feel it. I could feel it through his creative force. And the Avatar movies are literally memory movies. And the the felt sense of that channeled memory and how true he is trying to stay to that core memory, you feel it. And I am
Mhm.
not an empath, and I fucking feel it, right?
Yeah.
So like, there channeling comes through in a lot of different ways. And in my own example, like, if you had asked me when I was 20 if I would ever consider what I do channeling, I would have looked at you like, I don't channel. Nope, nope, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Much less the use of the word psychic. So channeling for me is a very interesting experience because don't I don't have a specific, like most people when they create channels for themselves for an entity, they are asked at some point, does that entity have permission to be in their body in some fashion or through them to
Mhm.
communicate? And this is where you end up with people that end up with weird ass icky stuff writing them,
Right.
and they feel like they have entities attached to them and other stuff. Like, not everybody that knocks on the door you let in your house, okay? People like,
I in my earlier days definitely had things riding because
right,
I didn't know how to give that permission and whatnot.
right. And something that I've been very blessed with, so I pass this information on as frequently as possible, which is your guides, your primary guides have a job. And their job is to protect the integrity of your blueprint. And some of your guides, their job is to keep your meat suit from self destructing. Some people have guides that keep their meat suit from being destroyed by the intersectionality of other blueprints, right? Like, there are so many different guides that we could choose to have as part of our team. And I knew really early with my gifts, with great grandma and grandma, and just these wonderful people in my life that are like, you're highly sensitive. You should probably protect yourself. And my guides themselves, my primary guide, whom I fondly call my no humor guide, and when my book comes out, you will learn what his name is. Yay. But his wisdom has always been, I'm not going to let anything in unless you give me permission to let things in. He's extraordinarily protective in kind of a absolutely no humor way, which is kind of funny. Like, a lot of people have these long conversations and they giggle and they laugh with their guides. I have other guides for that, but not my primary guide. He's like, it's black, it's white, it's red, it's purple, like it's there's no like. Anyway, and so when I started doing real blueprint readings, when I finally figured out, oh, there's actually like, oh shit, there's an actual pattern here, cool beans, I can actually like stick to this and get the core pieces people need without getting sidetracked and it being a 12-hour reading. That did happen. I don't ever recommend that.
Yeah, no.
And so I asked him, I was like, well, how can I do this better? How can I do this? Maybe not better, but I think the words I used were more like along the lines of what's the most clear, more precise way to do it? Because I seem to be just a ping pong ball in a wall, and that just doesn't seem to be efficient.
Right.
And he was like, oh, well, there are a lot of things you can do. And my channeling is not a guide. It's not a other entity coming through. When I channel, it is a combination of, the best I know how to describe it anyway, is your guides, like whoever your guides are that are talking, they have permission to talk to my higher self, the part of me that is too big and too vast to actually come through my body. So there's still a little bit of like a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
I am still me talking, but I'm the part of me that isn't in the meat suit. And so that's why for me, channeling is so exhausting, because I guess I could say, oh, I could let other people's guides in, but my primary guide is like, not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
You set up some rules in your blueprint, and I can't. He couldn't violate that, right? Like, I could make a choice to override him, but I'm not stupid, and I apparently decided something ahead of time to protect myself, and I'm going to trust that. So the channeling part is very much where I forget, because it isn't my information. My rules, so to speak, my boundaries are, if it's not for me, I don't want it. I don't want to carry it. And the channeling piece is to bypass my mental piece of, this doesn't make sense. Where does this fit? Where's the clarity? Should I ask more questions? Because my mind is a very busy place with my ADHD and autism. And I have been in sessions many years ago. I can remember a few that I was like, ooh, I think I may have put a little of me in there, and that did not belong. And it helps me bypass that. It helps me get out of my own way. And I don't have a contract with a particular guide. Like, I know people who are psychics and channelers that they have contracts with entities, that part of the contract is that they're going to, when they're ready, they have opened the doorway to that entity coming through them into this.
That had to be that one podcaster, because
Yeah.
they ended up channeling another entity, and it was one. Definitely seemed like one of their guides looking in, because
Yeah.
it wasn't like a known figure, and I think they described it as like, this is my friend.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
So that's interesting about the potential contracts too. A lot of people that I've talked to about channeling, and again, this is where we have to discern our own boundaries and what's right for us. Like, some people will have channeled experiences spontaneously.
I get those.
Yeah. Some people will invite it in because they want to open up and see what channels through. Sometimes it comes through in journaling, or you're sitting there writing, and all of a sudden it's not you seemingly writing anymore. It's just coming through. But it's so important to be discerning in this. And whether you're communicating, whether you're channeling, it doesn't so much matter, as long as you are fully aware of yourself and what you're allowing in and through, and that you're not allowing yourself to kind of be overtaken. And, for me, I think that in terms of channeling, I've actually cut off my channel now in terms of my live streams. I used to do live channeling, and I was like, I'm not, just like you said, there is a energetic toll that happens with channeling that's different than communication. Again, communication is, I'm sitting across from you essentially. One of my favorite ways to communicate with my guides is the astral temple, which is literally like you go in and you're in a special place where you're literally sitting across from your guides and you're able to have a conversation. But the channeling is you're opening your circuitry in a way for something else to come use your circuitry. So you're still here in your body having an experience. You're still running all of your own circuits and your own energy, and then all of a sudden something else is coming through. Of course, that's gonna it's going to tax your system a little bit more. So I stopped channeling. But I used to channel what I called the voice of love. I was like, what is this? And that was what I was told, is this is the voice of love. And I never knew what was going to come out of my mouth, but sure was really, really, really unconditionally loving.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be an open channel all the time, nor do we want to have 15 voices in our head all the time. Like, we have to have boundaries around this stuff.
And I think the caveat that I keep getting like pushback on that, like, I want to know all the things, or I want to feel all the things. I don't want to limit myself. I don't, there's a lot of fear, shame, disappointment around boundaries. And what I tell people all the time is, because I open myself up to more of myself and allow myself to hear from my higher place and from that other side, other people's guides, I created a boundary that keeps me from being used, right? Like, I don't have a contract with a whole other entity. So if I opened myself up, I have a knowing, an intuition that opening myself up could be disastrous to my physiological body that's already gone through a lot of stuff.
Right.
And because I have this well, and I think everybody's well is equally vast. Okay. I don't ever want anybody to think, well, I have a well and you don't. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, everybody has this potentiality thing, right? But I've stretched mine. Like, I've put that shoe on, and I've been putting bigger and bigger shoes on. Like, I know that I got a size 12 shoe, type thing. And if I opened that up, the accidental what could come at me, and I know that that's not what I'm here to do, right? The channeling that I do is very specific to the work. It's very specific to me being a teacher. It's very specific to the catalyst healer teacher piece. And I want to honor that. I could go, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. And I'm sure my guides would go, okay, well, you're changing your mind. You'd like to change your contract. Okay, well, have you? And I'm sure my guide would sit me down in the astral temple and go, okay, so here are the 50 things that, and I have been tempted a couple times to go, I don't want to do this anymore.
I think we all have, right?
Always. But I am so grateful for my guides that are so patient and loving and kind, and nobody's guides are impatient or angry at them. And, my own ego goes, oh my God, they must be pulling their hair out from their eyebrows in frustration with me, but they're not. That's my ego saying that, right? So the channeling potentiality. I could be a channeler like we see. I know that that is a potentiality. I also don't want that, and that's messy, and I got other stuff to do. So the channeling that I do is very specific to the work, what's needed, whose guides need to be heard. And sometimes I say things, I have no memory of those things happening because I do have this permission thing that's out in the universe that says, I trust universe, I trust my guides, and I trust other people's guides will always do what's best for their person that they're with, right? Like their contracts. I trust it. I trust it so implicitly that when shit falls out of my mouth and I don't remember it, and people go, Red, you said this, I go, okay. Like I have no memory. I have absolutely no memory of that, but I trust it. So I do these random channelings that probably, from what my feedback has been in the last 3 months, drive people batshit crazy and throw them a little bit into curves, throw myself into a curve, 100%. But I truly do trust the process.
Yeah.
And I know that even if something falls out of my mouth and I don't remember it and it sounded hurtful or it sounded harsh, I know that there was a reason for that I may not have a cognizant memory. And when I do downloads, 99.9% of it, I don't remember.
Right.
Unless it's a really key piece of information that is for me to hold on to that has to do with the work. And there are times I walk out of a download, I remember nothing. And other times I'm like, yeah, this random thoughts running around like a squirrel in a trapped wheel in my head. And I learned really quickly with this particular download process that I go write that shit down because it does disappear. Even if it's meant for me, it disappears.
Yeah.
So I have to write it down so I remember it.
That's the thing with a channel is it comes through like water or through like electricity and then it's gone.
And it's gone. It's absolutely gone.
I want to just throw out here a little caveat because this is a big ethics thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I can see there being people in the world who would be like, well, I'm not responsible for it. I just channeled it.
No.
Just
Yeah.
like when you drink or you get high or whatever,
Right.
if you have an open permission out there and something comes through you and you in your meat suit still are the one that says the words, even though they didn't come from you, you're still responsible for the aftermath of that. And that's really important to remember too, whether you remember something or not. If somebody comes to you and says, you delivered this piece of news to me, that we have to, that's some of the especially for us professionals practicing psychic skills or intuition or using these gifts that we've been given, is that we have to consider that ethics piece of, do I give permission right now to be used in this way? When it's random, can I hold the space around that afterwards? All of that are these considerations that we have to take in, because the communication, again, we're still like fully aware of. The channeling we might not be, but if we're channeling, that means we've given ourselves permission at some point to be a channel, and we are responsible for that part.
Yes.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's really important because, you know, without going into all that other stuff, like, I know that I trust the channeling, but that also means if somebody comes to me and says, you said this, I might not genuinely remember, and I have to sit with it. I have to really go, where's my ownership in that? And, you know, I ask questions in my head. Did I harm? Did I do okay? You know, what did I do wrong? Excuse me. What did I do wrong? Can I fix it? Is it mine to fix? Is it the right time to fix it? And is it mine to fix? And that's a tricky one with channeling, because in any other circumstance, I would say it is. And in sometimes it still is, because there is that culpability that I've opened that doorway.
Right.
And sometimes it's a refinement. Like, I'm sorry, I don't remember saying that. I probably was channeling in that moment. And I do have people that I interact with that I intentionally have to remember and I have a few people that I've turned the channel knob off for them because it makes them so physiologically uncomfortable, and that reaction is so drastic that I just turn that off for them.
Yeah. And I think this is where, if you are a practitioner, if you're using these kinds of things with anyone else, I always set up the container with anyone to kind of let them know what the potentialities are that might come through or what could happen. And I ask for permission, if a message comes through, can I share it with you? All of that. Like, we get to think about how we use these various gifts, how we use the communication we get from things that maybe other people don't see or hear or know. How do we remain ethical when we're opening our channel to allow information through? Like, these are things not a lot of people think about or talk about because they're like, yay, I have this cool gift and I want to go and I want to use it and I want to embody it and I want to be it and I'm incredible. And yes, you are. And
permission.
And yes, permission from you to entity to entity, person to person, all of that. Where can you bring in more communication around permission?
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of complexity to it. We could probably do an entire series on channeling, actually, and communication, now that I'm thinking about that. I didn't realize how this is me going, I guess I had not realized the potentialities of that because I don't go there. That's not the place that I go.
There's so much to it. Because again, as we started with all the clairs, there's like at least 8 different kinds of clairs.
More than that. There's
there's a lot.
Something.
There's a lot of words that I do not try to store in here.
Yeah.
But there's all these ways to communicate. There's all these ways to open the channel. Just toss in another thing out there about channeling. I will give my guides permission to channel through my hand.
Yes.
Through the writing. So nothing's coming out of my mouth. I'm not really getting it in my brain. It's just coming out in my hand as I'm writing or typing.
You can be really specific.
Yes.
And they honor it.
Yes.
They
let
do.
yourself give your guidelines. Like, I'm okay with this, this, and this. I'm not okay with that. And trusting that, again, your guides are on your team. They will not do anything to hurt you. That is my big thing that I keep sharing when people are like, but I heard this message about this really negative thing. I'm like, okay, well, good news. That's not your guide.
Right.
So you probably can actually tell that entity, if you want to, that you just don't want to talk. And that you can come back to your guides and ask your guides to support in that boundary and that separation between you and whatever else.
The boundaries protected. Boundaries and guidelines are not supposed to be from fear or shame or feeling like you're going to disappoint someone. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that the shadows of our egos are really powerful, right? It's easy to think negative and harder to think positive.
Yep.
But that swing between shadow and light, we've talked about the shadow and light journey. This gift, this ability is equally shadow light, right? Like you can get yourself all twisted up in a thing. And I've had people absolutely adamant that they are being possessed by the devil or whatever. Like there's an evil thing in my house or there's an evil thing that's attached to me. I'm like, I can't say it's right or wrong. And also, it's not like your guides are not going to haunt you, tell you to do bad things. Schizophrenia is a thing.
I just want to throw out there too, with this communication piece, that, and honestly channeling too, I'm just going to make a comparison. I am, as a trauma therapist, specialized in parts work. So internal family systems, parts of self. We get hijacked by traumatized parts of us all the time. We get hijacked by reactive parts of us. And it's kind of like they're channeling through us in those moments. They have kind of taken over and they're running the show. And what we really want to do is communicate with our parts. We want to communicate with what's happening in the inner world rather than letting them front and take over. Because that's kind of what channeling is. You're letting something else front and temporarily take over the space, the body, the mouth, the hand, the whatever. And we give ourselves on our really wounded parts permission to take over all the time. So this is so much bigger. It's in us, it's outside of us, but both of these themes are important personally and spiritually. So
Yeah.
I invite you to really like chew on these two concepts
Yep.
and see how they apply in your own life. And as always, if you have questions, you know where to find us. So,
Yeah.
and
Deep topic. If you have questions, please reach out. Like, I feel like every time we go, oh, we're going to just talk about this one little thing, and then
there's
it
so much
becomes,
to it.
there's so much to it. And I have to honor that some of that is also the 9, right? Like, you say something and I go, oh, here's some clarity with that. And then you go, oh, what about this? And I go, oh, yeah, here's some clarity about that. And next thing we know, we have this huge thing. So, those of you that are listening, please know that first off, we don't script this. We just have a topic, we go with it. And if anything that we say triggers something that you would like to discuss, please reach out. We are very, very approachable, I promise.
Yeah, we're all over the internet. We're
Yeah.
available. We're here. We're continuing to do what is ours to do. So if there's something we can expand on,
Yeah.
please let us know. Otherwise, we're going to be back with our last episode of this season of Breaking the Barriers, and we're going to be wrapping it up by talking about that shadow light journey. And oh my gosh, I have lots of shadow light journey stories to tell because I wish I had my notebook right now, because I now officially have a channeling notebook where I talk to my guides and I give them permission and I let them pick out a pen color, and then I write their name in the pen color, and then I go,
that.
all right, let's go. And I let them, journal
Yeah.
for me.
I
And
love that.
one of my guides the other day, my Weaver guide, she was like, congratulations, you have cracked the code on the shadow light journey.
Yes.
And now you just have to fine tune it a little bit more about, not grabbing on so hard and getting caught in the whirlpool when you're in the shadow side of the journey.
Yep.
So we'll be talking about all of that on our next and final episode. Oh, so thank you as always for joining us. We love you. We see you. We're cheering you on. And we are here in service. Let us know if we can do anything. Otherwise, until next time, this is Breaking the Barriers.